Is it working? The stupid thing is that I actually have my camera set up and everything, and it looks awesome on my camera, but my webcam is not. So. But it's I don't have the right thing to set it up. But whatever. Okay, we're going live.
Oh, live. Like okay. Well, looks like we're live. Maybe.
Yeah, I muted the. Yeah, I muted the crap out of that. That got loud very quickly. Okay, I guess we're live.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, hi. Chaos, much chaos. Let's just, okay, I'm going to go take the rounds on Facebook and say we're live because we should probably do that. Because I actually managed to do it without with 4 minutes to go, as we were saying. So hopefully that'll happen. Okay, so
we're good. I think we're ahead of schedule.
We are ahead of schedule, aren't we?
Can you tell if is anyone commenting or anything yet, just to make sure that we're solid?
Well, first of all, I think we need to. Nope, nothing. I think we need to share the link. That should help.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Okay, so let me see here. I am writing out now. Oh, I love live. Live is fun.
Live is life. This is the reality of the situation. Things are never as polished as they seem.
Oh hell no. Am I? Is it if I swear on YouTube? I don't know.
I swear on YouTube all the time. I never don't swear. So yes, it is.
Good, awesome. Because I have a tendency to swear. I do that quite a bit. So there's that. I try to anyway. I try to swear. You know, it's healthy to swear a little bit.
I think so. It's a release. It's a release of sorts.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we have that on my page and on my other page. Hopefully, we'll be having it on many other places. And people who are joining us now, so sorry for the rounds.
Sorry about, yeah.
Just sorry. Okay, let's see. Okay, out of photography, so we can share that stuff. And post. And silence. I love that part. Okay.
Well,
okay.
I'm messaging. Are we good? Because I'm messaging with. He said that he said he posted hello, and I just wanted to make sure things went through.
That. Welcome to live chat. I don't want to learn more. Nothing. I can't see anything posting. That's annoying. I want to see people.
Oh no.
I hope. Oh, no. There's just say something. Say something. No.
I'm guessing, I think it comes in under the actual comments on the page for the live feed, where it's at on YouTube.
Yeah, I would assume so. That's where I am. I am so not a tech person, says the photographer who deals in tech. Oh, Simon is on. Yes, I can see it. Simon is on. We're good to go.
Okay, everyone, we're here. We're good. I think we're precisely on schedule, 2:15, 15 minutes late, but on schedule.
Oh, goodness, I love it.
Nonetheless.
We're fashionably late.
Always.
You have to be a little bit fashionable.
It's a thing.
So hi, Jonny. Thank you for joining me. And good to see you in person.
Yeah, you as well. How's the day treating you?
Warm. I have a fan here. I have my own little Come on.
I know. It's in the 90s here in Denver, and I live in an old apartment. I'm streaming from my home office, and I don't have air conditioning in my building. So some of my clothes might be coming off. Everyone, fair warning as this goes along. It's not a perversion. It's just me. Exactly. Trying to maintain my body temperature. So yeah, be prepared for that. Nudity and cursing. That's just whenever I get interviewed, those are parts of the thing. So
I wish I had that luxury. I don't have an air conditioning either, but I have a fan. So there's a fan. It's not strong enough.
There you go.
My hair would blow in the wind, and that would be awesome. An epic, just because. The crazy thing is I need to keep an, whoa, we have people joining us.
Okay, so right
hi.
now,
Hi guys.
we're just talking shit, everyone. There's zero things going on right now. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here. It means a lot.
Sarah J is saying that she wants you to keep the clothes on. So don't take your clothes off, Jonny. Don't take your clothes off.
Well, now I'm a rebel, so I'm gonna do it just to piss her off. So that was the wrong thing to say, Sarah. You know me well enough to not say don't.
Oh, this is getting funny. So today is gonna be interesting. I was like, oh, okay, now I have figured out how to like have the meeting where I can see you on one side and YouTube on the other side, so I can see everyone.
Okay, we're fucking solid, everyone.
We're so solid.
So solid.
So solid. Says the woman who said, I'm gonna swear and stuff. Okay, I even have stuff written down in a book and everything. Like I feel super prepared now, and I'm just kind of. So I will say this: for a moment there, I was panicking like crazy because I found a little background story. Everyone, I found out I thought I could use Google Hangouts, and apparently Google and YouTube discontinued that whole relationship in 2019. And so I watched an old video and I said, yes, I'm solid. I'm going to use my camera for YouTube. It's going to be solid. It's going to be gorgeous. And I'm going to be epic. And then about 30 minutes in, like before the meeting, I found out that none of that was true. And I had to scramble, let's say that. And I got a Zoom Pro account in order to make this happen. There was a lot of panicky going on, but it worked, and we're only 15 minutes late, and there's a lot of people joining us.
Yeah, we're here now. That's so am I the first like live that you've done? Am I the first?
You're the first. You're my first.
Oh my goodness, I'm so flattered. I'm like I'm gonna take my hat off. I'm so flattered, in fact.
Yes, please do, because I mean I love your hair.
No, you know, it's my hair's getting really long. I don't know what to do with it. I've just been pinning it back recently, and it's working fine. But you know, I want my curls to come out like yours. So,
do you actually have hair underneath?
Oh yeah, but I have my hair is almost bleach blonde. I'm like platinum blonde. So when my hair grows out, yeah, I look like I look like it's ridiculous. I'll grow it out sometimes just so everyone can laugh at me, but it's pretty bad.
It's not very metal. Is that what you're saying?
It's definitely not very metal. I'd have to dye that shit black and, you know, do a rat tail or a mohawk. Yeah, I'm anti-metal when I look like someone who would be on the Disney Channel, except for all the tattoos. You know, it's bad.
We need more tattooed people on the Disney Channel for sure. That's a new concept. We need to work on this.
I shouldn't talk shit about Disney because they own everything now. So I'll ruin my career if I talk shit on Disney. So I'm sorry, Disney. I'm sorry, everyone out there who loves Disney and, you know, you're all obsessed. No beef with Disney. I don't want to go there.
Just leave that whole thing alone.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here. We had like Cicely was saying, we had a little bit of technical issues, but we worked through it. So we really, you know, appreciate all of you being here. And I'm very honored to be here doing this conversation. It's always a huge joy for me to talk with artists that I admire and respect, especially about art and creative development and all of that. So we're going to have a good discussion, and definitely everyone, please feel free to chime in with your questions or comments or suggestions, or if there's stuff you want to hear us discuss, we'll try our best to get to all of that. And I'm going to stop talking now. So I'm just going to put myself on pause.
Oh my goodness, that's just for me who says that. I have a feeling that we're not gonna have a tough time finding something to talk about.
Absolutely not.
Jonny and I have been chatting a little bit back and forth on Messenger, and we are in pretty much agreement that we both admire each other's work. I think that's pretty much where we are now. Yes. And Jonny was a huge inspiration of mine when back in April, when things was very depressing and weird with Corona and everything, and he posted his epic self-portraits, and I bet everyone who's here have seen your epic self-portraits. I would most certainly hope so, or else if you haven't, go check out his Instagram. It is insane. Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
Are you blushing? Is that
Maybe, yeah. That's why I do this high contrast, because you can't tell what's going on with my face, so I can just remain emotionless like a machine. There's a plan for everything that I do.
Oh, because I don't believe that.
Well,
Well, yes,
you know,
the plan, but the whole
the funny thing about those self-portraits for me too was, they were received a lot better than I thought that they would. Like, a lot of my content I create to share. I create imagery to share. I create art to share. Like, that's one of my driving forces. I want to be seen as an artist. But I was in such a weird place as COVID started setting in and the isolation. And I'm so used to working with these teams and creating. And it's people who know me know that I'm always creating something. And suddenly all of these creative outlets were gone. And I felt like I was suffocating. And I was doing self-portraits before that, but I started doing it more of a creative way. And I was like, fuck it. I don't have to appeal to anyone. I'm not worried about how these are going to be received. This is for me. Like, I literally did it just for me. And then I reflected on them and I'm like, wow, I really love these because I feel like they represent me as an individual, as a man, as an artist. And then I shared them. And I remember like sharing one and then coming back the next day and going, holy shit, like that was completely unexpected. And it's, I do put weight on what I put out there. So it was nice to create something for me and to express myself and share myself with our community and, through social media and things in that way without necessarily like wanting it to be received well and it just happening to be received well, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. I remember you telling me after I fangirled out and messaged you and said your self-portraits are amazing. You're telling me, hey, you need to do this too. And so I did. And I created my own self-portraits and something similar happened, the whole thing blowing up. And
yeah,
because of you, I and I've told you this before, live on another interview that you had. I think that was the one with Nina.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And I, the thing that happened when you inspired me to make these self-portraits was I suddenly like reconnected with my own style, and that's ultimately like the whole goal, like the whole style thing is the reason why we're here today. Because I want to talk about how we as artists develop our styles and how we can really get in there and find our own voice and get our art to represent what we have in our brains, because that's the difficult part. Like figuring out all the technical stuff, frankly, is easy in comparison to finding your style.
Oh, agreed, wholeheartedly.
Like it's buttons, we'll figure it out, but finding your voice. So Jonny, let's get right into it.
Well, go ahead. I think it's hard. I think that as artists and as visual artists, I'm speaking specifically as photographers. Like I consider myself an artist and photography is my medium, but I know everyone who's here predominantly are photographers. And I think we're in an interesting space with our art form because it's so easily accessible and it's so easy to share. And there's such an excess of it everywhere all the time. So, if you're a painter, you spend time and you're in your studio and you're brush strokes on canvas, and there's all of this introspective time that you spend developing your craft. And yeah, I mean, you could take a picture of it with your iPhone and be like, hey, Instagram, I painted a duck or whatever, but it's not the same way. Like we take this photo and then we upload it directly to the interwebs. And then we're like, holy shit, what does the world think about us? What does the world think about my work? What is this? What is that? And so I think there's this very pragmatic driving force where automatically people want to be creating things that will be received well. Right. And there is that give and take that can start immediately. Like you can buy a camera of any caliber and take a photo and upload it into, let's say, the Art of Portrait Photography. Hannah, I love your group. I'm not knocking on the group, but and then people just love it or hate it. They shit on it. They embrace it, whatever happens. And so suddenly you get in a pattern very quickly where you're creating for likes, you're creating for this, you're creating for that. You're looking at tutorials by people that you like and you're trying to create work like theirs. And so it's all this there's very little, I think, experimentation where we explore what we can do with our camera, where we explore light and we explore angles and this and that. It becomes, okay, well, I need to have an 85 millimeter lens and I shoot exactly from 10 feet away and I use one light and it's 45 degrees down and it's 45 degrees in and I have to have a fill light because my shadow density has to be at 50 and I'm using this preset in Capture One because Chris Knight said that I need, and it just goes, So there's all of these things, and there's not just that creative play. You know, like I love pottery. I'm horrible at it. But it's like when I make something, I just, you know, I use my hands or sculpture and I just do it. And it's just fun and it's silly and I enjoy it and I lose myself in it. And it's very hard for me. And I think for a lot of people to do that with photography because of the relationship that the world has with imagery right now. And because of the almost weird level of accountability we have to our imagery, in terms of putting it out there and automatically receiving critiques, judgment, feedback, yada, yada. So obviously that doesn't say anything about how I have developed my style, but I think it's just a really important preface, that I think the circumstances are stacked against photographers in terms of developing their voice.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
and then of course, if you get a camera and you're like, oh my God, I love taking photos, I love connecting with people, I want to make money with this, then you automatically have this other driving force where it's like, how do I create images that can make me a living? How do I create images that can bring in income? And so now there's all of these forces that are directing the flow of your aesthetic, that are directing whom you shoot, how you shoot, when you shoot, where you shoot, your lighting, your editing. And so there's very little wiggle room to just say, fuck it, I'm going to put this purple light on, you know, me while there's a cat on my shoulder and I'm eating Jello, like whatever. Yes, I've done that. I haven't shared those, but
I want to see that.
later. But you know, so I think the biggest part of it is obviously we emulate in things, but it's really experimentation, and that sounds cliche, but it's just trying new things and not expecting results, leaving expectations by the wayside, leaving pragmatism by the wayside, and just pulling out a camera and saying, this is an idea that I have, and then allowing that idea to take you to another idea and so forth. So it's almost like free associative writing, where you just start writing and there's no intent. And some of the best things that I've ever written have come from free associative writing, because then I'm not putting up blocks that would prevent that creative flow from occurring. So getting into that flow state is important, but it's also very challenging at times. You know, especially if you're a hyper intellectual person or you have that analytical engineering type mindset and it's, you know, waging war with the artist within you. That can be a conflict that's very hard to mediate, for me at least.
Oh, I'm right there with you, and I think when you're talking about the whole experimentation thing, and kind of finding like, not be so focused on the result. Like I'm super rusty right now, and because, well, heck, we all are. Like
Sure.
we haven't gotten out too much to shoot, and I've started trying to get out and take photos in natural light, just like you, and I have not particularly liked what I put out there, and but I have learned something in the process anyway. And I think that's really, really important, that we go out there and we experiment and we say, this might not work, and that's okay. Don't be so goddamn attached to the final result. Just kind of be in the process and experiment in the process, and just enjoy it and learn, because failing is where we're going to learn the most, in my opinion.
It's so true. And I mean, I think it's kind of like geography. You know, I've traveled a lot in my life. I've lived pretty much all over the United States, and I'll have friends who are like, oh, I want to live in LA. I want to live in New York. I want to live in these places, wherever it might be. And I'm like, well, go there. Just go there and see. Like, there is this conception of what it's going to be with anything in life. And then there's the reality of what it actually is for
Right.
you, the individual. And the only way you find that out, so the person who thought they were going to love New York, turns out they loathe New York, and then they wind up living in a small town in Iowa. Why? Just because that resonated with them. And similarly, I think in terms of like technique and approach and even subject matter, like, we don't know what really drives us as artists until we allow ourselves to experience all of these different things. And then through those experiences, we start to define what speaks to us, what resonates with us. And when that starts to happen, then we're empowered to be able to create things that have the potential to, in a very genuine way, resonate with others. But it has to start with us, because when it starts externally before internally, you know, it's like building a house on sand. It'll work for a little bit, but it's going to collapse. It's an inevitability.
Absolutely. And I think something that is really, like, today, as you mentioned, is super social media crazy. Like, everything is about social media. The other day I uploaded a picture on Port Photography, great group, by the way, and it got 700 likes, 1700 likes. It's insane. It blew up. And then the day after, I uploaded an image that got 36 likes. So
Yep.
so that's like my brain hurts. But I think my point with that is that it's I don't know about you, but I started photography about like 10 years ago. And this was like right before social media really started propelling and being what it is today. And I'm really grateful for that, because it meant that when I started, I didn't feel so goddamn dependent on people's approval of what I was doing. And I wasn't so affected by what was popular. I had that time and that space, that creativity to just kind of experiment. And so I think I heard you in another interview say that you've been photographing for about 10 years too, right? Or no,
roughly. I mean, I've been, I mean, I've been like, I had a Polaroid camera in my hand when I was a child, you know, but I got away with it and then lived a bunch of different lives and did careers. I would say I've been shooting on a professional level for probably 3 years. I've been shooting seriously for probably 5 or 6 years now, somewhere thereabouts. But it's always been part of my life, you know, in some way or another. And even when I went actively involved behind the lens, I was still an admirer of photographers, of fashion photographers, of photojournalists, you know, of these different people within these subgenres of photography. So I think it's always been a part of me. And yeah, I once again, I think the social media thing is weird too. You know, it's like, comment thing, all of that social media traffic, it actually drives dopamine in our brain like drugs do, or like anything else. Like it's an immediate validation. You jump on, it's true. You know, you see, okay, something has 1.7 thousand likes and you get a high from that. Like your brain releases dopamine and it activates the pleasure centers of our brain. So now if you have someone who's just starting out, and let's say they have a camera, I'm shooting on the Sony A7R4. I keep saying this, Sony sponsor me. But awesome camera. You know, eye autofocus, all of these things. So you put some good glass on it, you're going to get a sharp photo. It doesn't mean it's a good photo, but it could be very technically sound very easily. You jump in a Lightroom or Capture One, you throw a preset on it, you put it out onto Instagram, you drop the hashtag, you know, art of portrait photography, you drop a game of tones, you drop, you know, like my portraits, folk portraits, hashtag this, hashtag that. And all of a sudden people are like, yo, son, this shit's dope as fuck. Your feed is fire as fuck, or whatever it might be. And people are like, I can't believe that you did this. This is mesmerizing. And all of these, you know, inputs. And some of these people I think have grounds to stand on, and other people just, they're riding trends. But the reality is then you create this feedback loop right away where you're like, in order to feel good about my work, it has to meet this level. So then you create something significant and personal to you and you put it out there and there's crickets. You know, your 1.7 is just 37. Your 100 comments is only 1. And so by starting out using that as a barometer for the quality and caliber of art that you create, you never really get a chance to tune into yourself because you're always tuned in to the external world and what everyone else is saying and how everyone else is receiving your work. And I think that's really damaging to artistic development. And I think that's a hard thing to overcome and kind of unbreak as you try and reconnect with yourself. So it's a syndrome unto itself, I believe. And it's kind of sad to me to see so many artists with so much potential floundering in this place where they're not speaking in their native tongue, if you will. They're not really expressing authentically. They're expressing in a way that might be beautiful, but they're expressing in a way that's not for them. And, you know, commercially and stuff, there's that. But when we really speak about ourselves as artists, I think that there's a tragedy in that when someone has so many beautiful things to say and share visually, and that just gets truncated because of this feedback loop.
Absolutely. It's like that instant, as you mentioned, the instant gratification. And sometimes I find myself in a situation where I'm like, oh, wow, now I'm valid as a photographer. And I'm like, I have people like you telling me that I'm great at what I do. And I'm like, no, I believe that. But I believe the 1.7 thousand people who say that this specific portrait that I'm doing is amazing. And that's tragic. Like the idea that we are so, what do you call it? Non-native English speaker here, just so you guys.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Scandinavian. I'm allowed to. It's my excuse. But now I can't even remember what I was about to say. It's going well, but it's I think my point is that it's tragic that we're so dependent on the gratification from the masses and not from the people who matters, and also from ourselves. Like the person that matters the most is yourself. It sounds a little cliche, but it is for a reason.
No, it is. And even if you avoid it now, I think you at some point have to come back to it. You know, I think call them a professional photographer, and that definition is wide open. But someone who's making part or all of their income from photography, I think there's always this journey where they start doing things and they're making money, and then the money becomes validation. And then at some point you start banging your head against your wall where you're like, fuck it, I'm going to sell all my gear because it's no longer fulfilling, because you're not finding what you once did. You know, it's like, I remember when I first picked up a camera, like a real camera, let's say 5 years ago, and I'd shoot everything that I saw. I mean, I was taking 1,000 photos a day of people, of plants, of sunsets, of water, of shadows on the wall. And like my hair standing up thinking about it. I got so excited, and I would look at the images and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the way that I see the world. And then I started getting into shooting genres that didn't mean anything to me. And I'd get home and I'd like upload my photos to my computer, and I would just sit back and sigh, you know, and I'd put my head in my hand, and it felt gross. It felt like something that was so meaningful to me. I was exploiting it, and I was leveraging it for something that was insignificant, and it felt like a betrayal in a way, because photography has done so many things for me. And so, you know, I'd rather see someone come to that point earlier on and be able to cross that bridge than have it happen later. Because I think the longer that you take to identify with yourself, with your art, with what you want to do, what you want to say, I think the longer that it takes, the more painful it can be. And sometimes that's just a necessity. You know, we all have to reach that point on our own terms. But if I could say or do anything to short circuit that process so someone could get it now versus 6 months from now, I feel beholden to do that.
Right. I'm just gonna real quick go over on the comments because we actually got quite a few.
Oh shit, let's do it.
And it's just, I mean, it's just really nice stuff. It's very positive. I'm just scrolling past the initial of us kind of ramping about. Magic Imagery say it's too bad that we can't join in on the conversation. And yes, it is too bad. We would love to have many more people here just kind of talking about this subject, because it's so important. There's so much more that goes into creating your style. And it's very emotional. It's very much about not feeling adequate. Can you say that word for me? Adequate?
Adequate?
Thank you. Adequate. That's a tough word.
I got it. And anytime you need that, I'm here for you.
Thank you. You're my vocabulary. Like it's going well. Book.
I'm your dictionary.
You're my dictionary.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so Sarah J Photography is saying that you're doing great. And Sandra Maniscalco, sorry if I butchered your last name. Love your moody interview environment. I've seen that before. It works. It's very moody. I wonder if one day we get to see you in Technicolor.
I'd like to thank Sony for having a great high contrast black and white filter for their A7R4. Sony, be alpha.
Johnny, I'm a Canon shooter. How dare you?
That's. I'll end this meeting right now. No,
no, we're getting into that whole weird.
Yeah, I don't care. I use what works best for me. I think everyone should use what works best for them.
Exactly. I'm right there with you. Reroute Your Life says, loving seeing you live, so much talent in one space.
Thank you.
That's very sweet. And Simon Diaz says, the challenge on Pro Education with Johnny Cell Portraits was epic.
Hooray. I'm glad you liked it, Simon.
And let's see. Reroute Your Life says, one thing I've learned is to not be focused on perfection, because you will never reach. I focus on the journey, enjoying and learning that rather than my work being perfect. I think that's the way to go about it.
I think so too. And I think the hard thing is that's an intangible thing. Like once you reach that state of mind, it's just there. You know, it's kind of like learning to ride a bike. It's one of those things where, you know, you see a kid and they struggle and they fall and they falter and, you know, they scuff their knees and whatever else and, you know, break a bone and blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly something happens and it just clicks, and then you can just ride a bike and you never forget how to ride a bike. I mean, you might feel less coordinated as you age on and all that, but the reality is that you jump back on a bike and that's just there. So it's like once you reach that point, it's the epiphany moment, but there's no clear-cut path to that. You know, there's no way to just say, well, if you do this, if you wake up and write 3 pages every morning and you do positive affirmations and you shoot stuff that's important to you, and if you do that for exactly 3.5 weeks, then you're going to wake up on the whatever 22nd day and you're going to go, I love my work and I love the journey. And like, it's amazing. Like I laud that and I respect that so much. And I wish there was a way to teach that. I wish there was a way to teach so many of these things. And, you know, I think so much of it is just having these conversations, and it's expressing ourselves as artists. And, you know, like I can be a very pent up person emotionally, despite how much I talk. And I get frustrated because the people who know me best will go, what's on your mind, Jonny? I'm like, I don't want to fucking talk about it. And it's what's on your mind. I'm like, it's not going to help to talk. What's on your mind? It doesn't matter. It's not going to help. And then all of a sudden I talk and I get done. I'm like, holy shit, that helps so much. You know, so I think just the conversations and the dialogue are really important. And the journey is so important. And we're never going to reach an end point. No matter what you achieve, no matter what you accomplish, there's always going to be something else to do. There's always going to be another way to leverage your work. There's always going to be the next adventure, the next experience. And that's why it's beautiful. Like the mountain keeps building. We're always summiting, and, you know, there's these plateaus, but it's just an ongoing journey. It really is.
I think it's also really important to separate a little bit the difference between being an artistic photographer, and I'm not talking about like style wise. I'm not saying that it's artistic portraits is your thing. I'm talking about the art of photography versus the art of making money from photography.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's a whole different game.
It is. Yeah,
and it's art.
There is, and there's I mean, and there's people who will be the first to admit it. There's folks out there who are, to be completely honest, not great photographers, not talented artists who are making amazing money from photography because they know the systems. Yeah, they know how to deliver, they know how to do these things. And then there's people, some of my favorite photographers who either aren't pursuing it for money or who can't seem to wrap their mind around that side of things, or it doesn't feel right to them. So even though they want that, they're struggling to do it. So, you know, if you're out there right now, there is not a link between talent and income. So if you're not making money from it, or if you're struggling to do that, it does not speak to your art. It does not speak to your talent. It does not speak to your passion. They're two totally different fields, and it's blissful when those things interact. When your talent results in money, it's, you know, heaven. Yeah, it's bliss. But these things don't necessarily have to coexist. So it's important as you're developing. You could develop as a business person, not as an artist. You could develop as an artist, not as a business person. Ideally, both of those things happen if that's what you want. But they rarely happen at the same time. One goes, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I've had this conversation with myself so much lately, especially for the past year and a half, I think. And we had a little bit of this conversation in Messenger yesterday, I think. My big issue have been, as we also talked about earlier in this interview, the feeling of adapting to the style that is necessary. And I'm not going to mention any names or groups or anything like that, but there is, when you go on social media today and you're a portrait photographer, I identify myself as a portrait photographer. So when you go on social media today, there is a certain style that is very widely recognized.
Yes.
And it's very popular, and it is popular for a reason. It can be incredibly beautiful, and it's very all around pleasing. So clients like it. It can bring money, which is wonderful. So I found myself in that whole situation where I had to kind of take a step back, because I realized that I had fallen into that pit of wanting the money more than wanting the art. And I think for me, I realized I'm an artist. I'm a photographer for the sake of the art more than I'm a photographer for the sake of the living. And yes, I want to live 100% of my art. There's no question about it. But I'm a bad businesswoman. There's no other way to say that. Like there are photographers out there who talk about, oh, you just have to separate your art from the stuff that makes you money. And I'm like, how do you do that? How is that a thing? I don't know how to separate that from myself. So Jonny, my question to you is,
yes,
have you found a way to mix your style and your art with making money?
I mean, yes. And I feel very fortunate and grateful for that. You know, people ask me, you know, if you look at the trajectory of my career, it really caught traction and took off in a very condensed period of time. You know, it was just suddenly, going back to that bike riding metaphor, it was like, boom, all of a sudden I was there and then I was here. And, you know, people ask, well, how did that happen? You know, what's your secret to that? And I'm like, obsession. It's really obsession. I'm obsessed with my art. I'm obsessed with creating. I'm obsessed with learning and applying and being better. You know, so the amount of time that I put into it, but I kept creating work. I kept interacting with other creative professionals. I kept working on these creative teams. I did free shoots. I did, you know, donation-based shoots. I put myself out there at fashion shows when calls for projects that were interesting. So I created a network of people who came to not only know my work, but to know me as an individual. And I think that's a really big thing for us as photographers that is often overlooked. You can have a great aesthetic, but if you're an asshole, people aren't going to want to work with you. I mean, like, if your aesthetic is world class, people will deal with you being an asshole, but you're still shortchanging yourself. So much of what we do with people, whether it's with individuals or these large teams, hinges on who we are and the experience we provide. And if, like, you're enjoyable to be around, and if you have good energy, and if you're excited, and if you lift other people up, people are like, fuck yeah, work with Jonny, because, like, you're going to get great images and you're going to walk away. And even if it's a 12-hour day, you're going to feel better than when you walked in.
Right.
And so it was putting myself out there, not only in the capacity of people knowing my work, but knowing who I am as a man and as an individual. And then designers started contacting me and going, hey, I love your aesthetic. Like, would you shoot my lookbook? Or, you know, publications started reaching out to me and going, oh, we're doing this feature. We'd love for you to shoot it. And so it almost happened organically. And I don't think that happens for everybody. But for me, it was just an effect of continuously creating and honing my craft and putting myself out there, putting myself into communities and putting fear aside. You know, I remember the first fashion show I ever shot, like, I had a flash on the top of my camera. I had never used off-camera flash. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Like, I set it to like 1/300th of a second. And I'm like, why isn't my flash firing? And I didn't understand sync speed. I didn't understand why any of those. And so I just threw that bitch off and I just fucking threw it to the side and I started shooting without it. But it's like, I was so intimidated. And now looking back, like, relative to the things that I've done, it was such a, like, low level thing and there was no pressure and people were just happy for me to be there. But I was mortified. I was so anxious being in this environment that I didn't know, that I didn't understand, where I wasn't known, where I didn't feel capable. You know, I didn't feel like I knew my gear. I didn't feel like I had a good eye, but I did it anyway. And I think that's one of the most important things if we're talking about reaching that point where, you know, you are making money, is putting yourself out there into communities, reaching out to clients. Fuck, if you want to shoot Nike something right now. Send them an email and be like, listen, I love Nike. I live Nike. I breathe Nike. This is why it would be amazing. This is why you should let me shoot a campaign. And if you don't believe it, bullshit it and just see what happens. And if you start doing that, I think it's funny. The response that you can get is really amazing. Even reaching out to people who you know, are a fan of in the industry. You know, it's like, oh shit, well, I can't reach out to him or her because they're at this level and I'm at this level. 9 times out of 10, you do it. Someone's like, hey, thank you so much for the compliment. Like, how are you? What's going on? And a dialogue ensues. So we get in our own way so much. So I think it's coping with fear and understanding that fear is part of that process of growth toward, you know, getting profit, getting income, and finding that balance and just sidestepping it. And it still happens sometimes with me. You know, I still get scared working with certain people and, you know, it's like stage fright. I have friends who are amazing actors and still to this day, like stage theatrical actors, they still throw up before every performance and they're lauded and they're amazing, but it's just part of it for some people. So don't let fear stop you. You know, use it as a catalyst. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you'll fucking fail or you'll falter. Someone will say no. And, you know, when it happens, it's really not that big of a deal. You just tip your hat, which is why I always wear hats, because I fail a lot and I hear no a lot. You tip your hat and you carry on and you just keep moving forward and you'll get there.
A little secret here. Gets public secret, but I had insane stage fright before now. And also when I first reached out to you, it was the same thing. I was like, okay, this person is someone that I really admire, and I wanna be inspired even more, but I was so afraid. And I have this rule in my life. I need to do things that terrifies me.
I love that.
I have a tattoo on my arm that says courage, just so I can, like, look at it once in a while and be like,
I love that.
I moved to a different country from my home country that I actually loved living in, just because I was too comfortable. So I'm all about overcoming your fear, but I'm also recognizing the fact that not everyone has such an easy time on it and doesn't thrive in fear. And I think something that's really important is that, and this sounds, I'm a dork, by the way. I'm into fantasy and sci-fi and whatnot. So there's a wonderful quote in Dune by Frank Herbert. I don't know the whole thing, but it's about overcoming your fear and stepping through your fear. And I think a large part of that is actually allowing yourself to be in the fear. Like recognizing that, oh shit, I am scared out of my brain right now, but what is it doing? What is it doing to me? What are the biological responses that's going on in my body right now? Why is my brain on fire?
Yeah.
Fear can be a propellant, and I think when you recognize that, and when you step into that fear, you can create something amazing, and you can overcome things that you didn't think you could overcome. I'm not jumping out of a plane though.
That's where you draw the line, huh?
I don't. Yeah. Nope, not doing that. I just want to circle back a little bit about the whole style thing. That's the main.
Oh, yeah, keep me on course, because I'll go off on tangents. We'll just be.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, this will be. I'll keep us in line. Post comments, please, and be like, shut the fuck up. Keep talking about what we're here to listen to. Like, please feel free.
Yes, please, because I have a feeling that we could probably like go about talking about this all day and go on to 1,000 different tangents about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking of comments, let's move over to the comment section.
Okay, let's do it.
Cahill Hazley says, "You're both so adorable."
Oh, thank you.
You're so cute. Okay, and there's a wonderful conversation going on, actually. It's really, really uplifting to see. Miss Sangber says, "I really want to get better at taking pictures, but I think it's really hard." And yes, absolutely, it's fucking hard. And so both Jens Bang, who is a friend of mine, and Sarah J Photography, I think it was, said, like, just encouraged her and said, hey, practice and keep at it. And that was just super, super, super wonderful to see. It's wonderful. Simon Diaz says, "I think when fear becomes excitement, you can do so much more for yourself than anything else in the world. It's the best feeling."
Yeah,
you're absolutely right about that. Sandra wants to hear about your tattoos. Do you want to tell us about your tattoos?
Well, you know what? It's funny, Sandra, because I was actually going to talk about my tattoos in relation to the discussion we were just having. So talking about running away from fear, I actually relate it to being tattooed. My artist, Aries Rising, I love you if you're watching this. He's like one of the greatest guys out there. We're literally brothers. Well, not literally.
Just look at your body, like just look at what you have on your body.
But so I'll take my hat off while I talk about this. There's like I get tattooed in very long sessions. So because my artist is so ridiculously good and popular, I mean, he's booked out for years. So when I have an opportunity to work with him, we'll do 6, 8, 10, even 12-hour sessions. And on sensitive parts of your body, obviously, you know, people go, well, did it hurt? Fuck yes, it hurts. Like anyone who's like, my tattoo didn't hurt, like, be honest. It might not have been the worst thing you've ever felt, but it didn't feel good. And if it did feel good, more power to you. Get into the BDSM scene. That shit's awesome.
You love it.
Yeah, embrace it. But there's this bit when you're getting tattooed, and for me personally, I think, you know, I'm a really sensitive man, but I also grew up in a very traditional Midwestern blue collar environment. So there's still that machismo about me. Like I've done a lot to kind of mediate that, but it's, you know, you're like, I'm not in pain. Fuck that shit. I'm not in pain. I'm tough. I'm a man. And it's just silly shit. But, you know, when I'm getting tattooed, if I fight against it, it makes it so much worse. Like if I'm getting tattooed, let's say on my stomach was the worst place I've ever been tattooed. And I wanted to tense. I wanted to brace. And when I would do that, I was creating more anxiety. I was creating more physical tension. I was creating more mental tension. And finally, I just gave into it, and I just started breathing relative to the shading that was being done, like the needle. And I'm not saying that it felt good, but it felt substantially better. It wasn't nearly as bad. And it's because I allowed the process to take place. I wasn't fighting the pain. I wasn't fighting the process. I wasn't saying, oh, this is wonderful. But I also wasn't trying to create this front against it. And I think very much like fear, if we let those things wash over us and move through us, they aren't as bad as we make them out to be in our minds. That's the funny thing. I think so many artists are anxious, and anxiety really is fear of the unknown and making something out to be worse than it ever possibly could be. The scenarios that we create in our minds are so much worse than anything we'll ever encounter in the world. And so then we give ourselves to the process and we go, oh shit, that wasn't so bad after all. And, we get kind of giddy about it. But more to the point, like my tattoos, I have probably about 70% of my body tattooed. It's probably 300 hours worth of work. I grew up in an environment where my father was part of biker gangs. So I had these big, burly, larger than life guys around me all the time, swigging Jack Daniels and smoking cigars and cursing. And so like I looked at them, at this little boy, and they were like these legends, these icons of men. And I idolized that so much. And I always knew it was going to happen. And funny enough, I didn't get my first tattoo until I was 20 or 21. My favorite artist at the time was down at Daytona Bike Week. I was living in Florida from New York City. And so I was like, hey, I don't care what it costs. I'm getting a tattoo. And it ended up being a half sleeve. And I got that done. And then it was years before I got another tattoo. And that wasn't until I met my artist, Aries Rising. And we have very similar thoughts on the world. We're very driven by the same types of mythology. We're both very compassionate people. We both love, cultures around the world. And so we started talking about these things. And I was like, man, I've always dreamed of having like this Yakuza style bodysuit. And he's like, man, I've always dreamed of doing a bodysuit. He has this prolific body of work, but nothing on that scale. And then it just started happening. And, a lot of this is places that I've traveled or, been, or cultures that I admire that have influenced me, like Bali and Japan and Thailand and, all of these areas that have these beautiful, rich mythological stories and, cultural history. So it's an homage to those cultures while also being indicative of my individuality. So through those respective stories, I'm honoring those places and those people and those cultures and that history, while at the same time honoring myself. And for me, it's a way to wear who I am on my sleeve, on my sleeve, literally on my head, on my chest, on my legs, all over the place. But it's an adornment, I mean, it's going to sound cliche and I don't want to get too metaphysical with it, but I'm agnostic. And I do believe that our bodies essentially are temples. And I think that it's beholden to us to do what we will with those temples, but it's a way that I adorn and decorate my temple. And it makes me feel whole. When I see photos of myself without these tattoos, it doesn't look like me, not because I'm missing tattoos, but because I'm not myself. And so much of this journey has been about me stepping into me, and it's happened concomitantly with my journey in photography. So all of these things have kind of represented this great becoming of myself as an individual. And I feel very honored to wear this art. I feel very honored to, have worked with Aries on that intimate of a level for so long. I feel very honored that this all creates conversation. Almost everywhere I go, people are like, oh, can I talk to you about this? Or tell me about the wolf skull. And I tell them that, one of my animal's ashes are dissolved in my skull because he was my best friend and he died. And we dissolved his ashes and he's always with me now. And, I'm going to try not to cry here, but it's significant. And just like photography, my tattoos have connected me to people. And I've had some conservative folks go, well, like, if people judge you and think you're a felon or that, I'm like, I don't give a shit. And it's funny because 9 times out of 10, the conversations are great. Like little old ladies come up to me all the time and they look kind of stern. And then they're just like, your artwork is beautiful. And it's amazing. And so I think there's always going to be detractors. You can't please everyone. But my solemn, heartfelt belief is that when we're authentic, when we're ourselves, our true selves, that we just become so charismatic and so attractive and so radiant, and we uplift others to be themselves. And it's this really beautiful process of reciprocity. So for me, I mean, ultimately my tattoos are an expression of who I am. And, I guess the only other thing is my mom loathes them, or did for a long time, but her story is now, so long as we can basically put like a hoodie on me and she can see her little boy, Jonathan, it's okay. So like, I won't get an upside down ice cream cone on my cheek or any mumble rapper shit on my face. This stays, but everything else, it's just an ongoing project. And just like I'm developing, this art is developing. And so it's an extension of me.
I think being open to different experiences and cultures and impressions are incredibly vital. Not only in our art, but also in our everyday life. I think,
Yeah.
honestly, if we are to grow as artists, we need to find inspiration and let ourselves be inspired by things that might not let us make us feel comfortable.
Yes.
Or like, I know exactly which pictures I can do that will gain popularity.
Yeah.
100%. I can do them blindfolded.
Yeah.
But they're too easy. So we have to make ourselves feel uncomfortable, I think, in order to make our art progress and develop the style that we ultimately need to have as us, as humans, because ultimately we are 100% connected with our style. I think as photographers, it's really, really easy just to kind of scatterbrain everywhere, and which can be a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Scatterbraining can be a good thing. I am guilty of that. But also we need to kind of bring it back in and figure out how we want to channel it. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit.
Oh no, I think we're both rambling, but no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And a lot of people ask me, well, what should I do to develop my voice? And I've said this in previous little kind of chats and exchanges, but one of the greatest moments for me was when I started regularly hearing, oh my gosh, I knew that was your work, Jonny. I knew that was your work. That was so profound for me because it was something that I sought, but there was not one thing that I did. But this is going to be the most cliche thing I'm going to say for weeks, but like, as far as developing your voice, fall in love with yourself. Like, fall in love with yourself. And it's like, you want to develop your voice, put down your camera for a little bit. Like, do you love nature? Get out in nature. Like, feel the wind in your hair and walk on bare soil. Like, if you love cinema, go to foreign films and watch them. If you love literature, like, pick up a book and read it start to finish in one night. Like, embrace yourself. And I think that the more that you embrace yourself and you celebrate yourself, and that leads to like a genuine love for yourself, I think that voice becomes just how you speak naturally. It's not forced anymore. And it's, there's a lot of people out there who are big on public speaking, and it's like, how do I public speak? Like, what do I do? And it's, it starts off very formulaic for most people. It's like, okay, I'm thinking about the spacing between my words, and I'm thinking about how I'm enunciating. And it's this forced process, and eventually it becomes something where you're like, oh, I'm just going to be conversational because it's just who I am and it feels comfortable. But, explore art, explore the world, explore yourself, explore others. And I think that's so important. Like, there's so much driven, directed stuff where it's like, well, I need to learn the exact lighting ratios, and I need to learn exactly how to edit this way. And if my dodge and burn technique is phenomenal, and if my studio space is a little bit bigger, and if I get a canvas backdrop by Oliphant, and if I upgrade to a full frame camera, and if I start using, newer, and there's all of these things where if this, if that, if this, and like, so much of it is, you can be the best technical photographer in the world and have nothing to say with those skills.
Right.
And then you could be someone who doesn't have a lot of technical skill, who creates these raw emotive images that people resonate with because they're real and they're authentic and they're human. So I'm not disparaging the technical side of things. I'm a fucking nerd. Like, when I was a little boy, I used to build computers and sell them to make money so that I could buy Transformers. Like, I'm off my cuff. But the point being is that, like, you need to give as much focus to yourself and to those intangibles as the tangibles if you really want to develop your art form in a way that's going to be significant to you and leave you feeling fulfilled. World be damned.
Right. Absolutely. Oh my, yes. Everything you said. It's incredible to me how, okay, let me rephrase. I don't have a ton of gear. I don't have a lot of expensive gear. I recently upgraded my 10-year-old 5D Mark II to a Canon R mirrorless. By the way, I still love that camera and it still works.
The Mark II is amazing. Like, honestly,
I've had multiple people tell me that my work on my Mark II looks like medium format. I'm like, and
Yeah,
that proves that you don't need something that's top of the line, latest thing out to create beautiful imagery. I have 3 lenses.
Yeah, I only have 2.
Oh, which ones?
35-85, always 35-85.
Okay, we need one more then. 50 millimeters.
I can't do 50. I don't know why. Digital, like it doesn't resonate with me. Like I honestly, if I wasn't worried about people going, oh, my nose looks too big, I would only shoot 35. I love that focal length. I love being able to put distortion into my images. You know, I love the intimacy of that. I love the slight distortion. And people are like, well, it's a frame this big and someone's nose looks a little bit larger. I'm like, get that close to someone's fucking face and their nose looks bigger. It's a normal perspective. Like, I don't always need my person's face shrunken into this like perfectly proportioned place. Like, that's not real. I want the exaggeration, you know, when I live in Denver, Colorado, and most people assume I live in the mountains. I don't. Denver is the high desert. If you've never been to Denver, we have the mountains around us, but this is high desert, which is why it's fucking 95 today. And I'm just sweating like a madman right now. But the first time you like walk at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains on the range, they feel like they arch over you. You feel like enveloped by them. It's like they swallow you, you know? And I love that feeling. I love that feeling of envelopment. And so I love that focal length because I can do that with my imagery, you know? And I love shooting low to high and making someone who's 5'1" look like they're 6'10". And it's just this grandiose bit. And it's because that's how I see that person. You know, I think that's a big reason on a tangent here. That's why I love shooting fashion, because there is a lot of aggrandizing of the individual. And inherently in people, like despite all of the ugliness, especially now that's going on in the world, like I see beauty in people and I see potential and I see value and I see these things. Like I think that we tend to see each other so much bigger than we see ourselves. Like other people see us so much bigger. And so I like to express that in my imagery. You know, how I see the world and how I see potential in people. And so, yeah, that's my rant for 35, for the 35 millimeter focal length. I love it.
Okay, you have me convinced. Actually, I was convinced before that, but my goal is that I need a 35. First, I need to upgrade my 50 because that's also 10 years old. But yeah, so I think it's really important not to get yourself caught up in the gear game. Not to think that you need the best, the top of the line. I don't own any L lenses for you Canon people out there.
Yeah.
I can't afford them. It's very simple. I don't have any strobes. I shoot speed lights. I'm working on changing that. I want the Godox 8200 just to have something. But I think the most important thing you can do when you are trying to develop your style is to focus on what you have and work with what you have.
Yeah.
Do it. Don't be afraid of it. And don't, first of all, don't let yourself get caught up in the gear game. Get out of the gear game. You don't need it. It's true.
Well, it's funny. Like for those of you who don't know, I'm gonna do some shameless self-promotion here very quickly. I'm fortunate enough to be on the roster at Pro EDU. They just recently announced that I'm going to be one of the instructors for 2020, and we're going to be doing this really amazing tutorial on fashion and editorial imagery, and also on artistic development, on finding one's voice and one's style, you know, along the lines of this conversation, which I really haven't seen done in a tutorial or workshop. So I'm so excited to be able to bring that forward to the creative community. But where I'm going with this, outside of the plug, thanks, Gary, thanks, David, for believing in me. I love you guys. Is I sent out all of this imagery to Gary, the founder of Pro EDU, because he was putting together these promotional videos and marketing material. So I sent him, he asked for like 20 images. I sent him like 120 because that's just what I do. But a couple of the images that he chose were some of my film shots. And those film shots were literally created using a Minolta SRT 101 and a 51.7 lens. I bought that camera and that lens combination for $35. And then I bought film and I had it processed. It's just a local lab. Like I'm developing my own black and white now, but I had it developed at like Mike's camera, you know? So the film cost me $5 for the roll. The development cost me $12. the camera cost me $35. So the images that this gentleman who has this giant company chose to use to promote me as the new instructor, the cost of that to me was literally less than I pay when I go out to eat sushi, because I'm a pig when it comes to sushi. So speaking to the gear game, it's like, it really is, it's only as important as you make it. And, you know, if you look back, I love Irving Penn and I love Marcel Duchamp and even Ansel Adams. I'm not as much into landscape photography, but all these people, like, we romanticize film, but the reality was, like, those were just boxes with glass and then film. And those are some of the most profound photographs because people knew those cameras inside and out. They knew their light. Like, my favorite fashion photographer is Paolo Reversi, and he works out of this small studio in his home. And, you know, he's basically quoted as saying, I know every inch of light in this studio at any time of day, regardless of the weather, regardless of the environment. He can close his eyes, and based on the feel, the atmosphere, he knows where the pockets of light are. And it's very dreamy when he says that, and it's very surreal, and his images are so dreamy and surreal. And, you know, he shoots predominantly on film still. So it goes back to it, like, you do not need top of the line anything to create incredible imagery. Don't let that be, you know, a hindrance by any means whatsoever. And if you have great gear, all the better. I mean, that's fucking awesome. It'll make your life easier, but it's not a necessity.
Absolutely. I have a question, and that's because I really want to know this. Um, so it's actually two questions. First of all, where do you find your inspiration for a shoot? Let's say you have free hands to create whatever you want to do. Where do you find inspiration?
So I have a massive collection of art books, like going back to Irving Penn and all of them. Like, I just have tons of art books, especially from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I really like looking back to film photographers' work. I am one of those people who romanticizes film. I don't think that the images are better necessarily, but there's this really beautiful aspect of literally having a box, having a strip of celluloid, it interacting with light, and then magic happening, and there's an image. So I definitely look to old film photographers. I have a collection of old fashion magazines, you know, old this, old that. I love tangible sources of material for inspiration. Gesundheit. If you'd have sneezed your glasses off, I would have peed myself. I'm telling you right now. But I love tangible.
I have these things that
there's okay, smart. You know, and I honestly, like, just for general inspiration, we have a great library system here in Denver. I just love going to the library and just pulling art books, photography books, fashion books. You know, I'm very driven by designers' work, not so much on the runway, but by lines. I'm driven by lines and textures. So I look to designers and the textiles that they use for inspiration. I look to nature. It really just depends on the mood that I'm in, to be completely honest. You know, I think if I have free reign, you know, sometimes I'm feeling melancholy, and sometimes I'm exuberant. Sometimes I'm loving the energy of the city, and sometimes I'm going, oh my God, if I don't escape people, I'm going to fucking gouge my eyes out. So, you know, it really depends on where I'm at. I mean, I still use, you know, I still use Pinterest. I'll jump on Pinterest, and I love using that as boards. I jump on Instagram. I look at artists that I really adore on there. So I try and pull from as many places as possible, because when I come to a conclusion of what I'm going to create, I don't want it to be one source, because I'm a really good reverse engineer. So I'm actually really talented at looking at an image, breaking it down, and going, okay, this is how I can do that exact thing. And I do that almost without thinking. And I don't want to do that, because I don't want it to just be replication. So by moving out into all of those different sources, I take a little bit from here and a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from here. And then I go, well, what if I kind of had like this sort of element, but then instead of it flowing this way, it's here. Instead of it being very organic flowing lines, what if things are very angular and blocky? So then it becomes this dialogue within my mind where how can I make these ideas into my own? And then sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night and I literally, you know, just write something down onto my phone, and I'm like, holy shit, this is everything. And, you know, then it becomes, how do I find the team to create it? So I think it really varies, but I try and stay open and receptive. And I've had inspiration taking out the trash in my alleyway. You know, there was this garage door that had beautiful texture on it. It was green and gold. And I saw it and I'm like, I love those colors and I love the grunginess, and it led to a concept. So, you know, I think if we keep our eyes open and our ears open and our hearts open, I think that inspiration is constantly coming from us. It's just, we almost need to tune into it. And once you tune into it, the hardest thing to do is to act upon it because there's just so much of it all the time.
That's a beautiful thing about creativity, that feeling of one's brain being on fire and literally going in every direction possible.
Agreed.
It's also a little scary because it can be hard channeling that inspiration and that energy. To piggyback off of the last question, I would like to ask you, how is your process doing your session, like prior to your session, during your session, after your session? What's your
So that's a great question. It's also a very complicated question because I don't only photograph one thing. So it's going to be a different answer. Like if I'm shooting an editorial, that's going to look different than if I'm creating a portrait session for an individual.
Right.
My process looks very different for all of those things. Communication is always key for me. I think if there was one cornerstone, obviously I like to talk. I also really like to listen. I like to learn about people. Like, honestly, I'm a portrait photographer and I'm a fashion photographer and I'm an editorial photographer because I'm driven by individual stories, who they are, where they've been, what motivates them, what inspires them, where they want to go, how they want to get there, how they've struggled. Like, I'm the type of person who would sit down next to you at the bar and have a drink and you'd be like, I'm sure you don't want to hear this. And I'd be like, the fuck I don't, what's going on? Because I'm genuinely interested, because that's how I feel more connected to the world. And in seeing and hearing other people, I feel seen and heard. So it's a powerful exchange for me. So just being open and learning about, who the person is, if it's an individual or if it's a designer, learning about what their process is. Why are they inspired to these types of textiles? Why do they like these shapes and silhouettes? Who's their inspiration? What are they trying to accomplish? When someone sees their work, what do they want them to see? Who do they want to see wearing their pieces? And so there are these abstractions that give me an idea of the inner workings of that individual insofar as they allow me in, that opportunity. And then insofar as I can relate to or interpret what it is they're saying or sharing. But that's a huge part. And even on session, it's funny. I schedule these really long sessions. And if you've been photographed by me, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not like let's get in 30 minutes and get this done. If it's a production environment and that's all the time I have, that's fine. But I would rather literally sit with the person for 3 hours and spend 20 minutes of that time photographing them, because we'll photograph something and I'll change up part of the set. And then as I'm changing the set, I'm going, okay, this is going to be moodier lighting. And so I'm like, well, I want them to be moodier. So like, let's talk about this. And then I bring it back. And earlier they might've mentioned they moved to Denver from Chicago and it was hard. And I'm like, oh, like what was hard for you about that? And then I just allow them to explore that space. And then it's like, oh, hey, let's just pause for a second to get a couple of these because I really love what you're doing. And so I talk and I talk and I listen and I talk and I listen and I talk. But I think that it's really important too, on a more pragmatic level, to establish expectations, regardless of what I'm doing with the team or with an individual, like what is expected of me and what I expect of them, whether that's a single person or a team of 12. And I think that's really important to keep things seamless. And that way, if everyone knows what their role is, if everyone knows what they need to be doing, and then if everyone is given the freedom and autonomy to be themselves and do what it is they do, things generally work out really well. And I think even that's communication again. So, there's a lot of variance in what I do, but it's a lot of talking and a lot of listening always.
I think as photographers, especially photographing people, communication is everything. Like we are ultimately photographing people and holding up a mirror, showing the world these people. And it is our honor and our duty to tell their story. And if we don't know how to ask questions, and if we are not interested in them as people, well, then maybe we shouldn't be portrait photographers.
Yeah. It's really easy, in my opinion, to create a pretty picture. It's really challenging to create a beautiful portrait.
Absolutely. I agree.
And there's a vast divide between those two things. And before I started running my own workshops, I assisted a lot of other photographers, basically setting up lighting for them and doing that. It's like I've worked as like a grip and a digitech and all of these things. But, I would assist them. And then as they got to learn more about me, they're like, oh, hey, well, talk, fucking talk. But one of the hardest things is, when you're at a workshop, and especially when there's models who are participating, or I hate using the word model, when there's humans who are being photographed, it's hard because one of the things is someone, let's say, is learning about light and they're like wide-eyed and they're behind their camera and they're click and they're click and you could hear a pin drop. No one is saying a word because everyone's so obsessed with what they're doing technically that they're not communicating. You got to walk over and nudge someone right in the kidney, and you're like, let them know that they're doing a good job. Say, fuck, you're so radiant right now. Like, I love what you're doing, but let's just lift your chin, like communicate, get them involved. And it's like, I'm so theatrical when I shoot. If you get a chance to see me shoot, or if you see behind the scenes, it's like I'm going, yes, and that's amazing. And I love that flow. Let's just do that. Yes, regality. Lift your chin a little. Now look down at me. Look down. I'm just a peasant to you. Look down your nose at me. And it's this. And I'm like, no, let go. Shake that shit out. We're going to move on. And it's a show, and it's this grand show. And I love it. And the people I work with love it. And then we get animated together and we explore character and place and in mood. And that's not for everyone. There's people who are very stoic and very linear who create spectacular photographs, but it's maintaining that dialogue and understanding that there's a human in front of you. And even if they're a talented, experienced person who does this for a living, it's still a human being, and respecting and honoring the fact that it's an intimate thing that we do. Someone is stepping in front of us and giving us an opportunity to photograph them. And it's very intimate and it's very raw and it's very intense. And so I think if that's honored, then things once again tend to fall into place. Like, and this isn't just about like misogyny. I'm not just speaking to, like the men out there. There's a lot of disgusting men in this industry, but there's also a lot of asshole women. So whatever. And individuals, I'm not even going to gender thing, theys, them, everything. Like, there's just shitty people and there's good people all around, but it's don't objectify who you're photographing. Don't lose sight that it's a person. And they have feelings and they have emotions and they have stories, and interact on that level and respect that. And if you do that, it makes things a lot easier, and it really leads you to a place where you can create some significant work.
I am in total agreement with you, and for once I don't have much more to say to that.
Hooray!
Imagine that. I have a feeling that could probably talk all day, every day. I think we are hitting around the hour mark. We just passed the hour mark. So people, if you have any questions, if they're still hanging on with us, we haven't left them in the trail behind our conversation.
Wait, there's other people? What's happening?
So if there's anyone who has any questions, post them now, because we'll be wrapping up. And I just really want to go quick over this real quickly and see who have commented, because there's actually some nice ones. David Lee joined us. I don't know if he's still here, but he said, "Hey brother." I don't know if that's how he would say it, because actually
he would he's super intellectual, so he'd probably be like, "Hey brother," and then go into a tangent about like existential ideology and the struggle to establish oneself in a transient environment. And we'd smoke a bunch of weed and both just sit there looking at the stars like, fuck. That's pretty much how that would go.
That sounds like fun.
It was great. I love David.
Let's see what else. Sandra says that this was a great interview. I feel the passion, and yes, I know your work when I see it.
Thank you.
And she also says that she's not a fan of her 50 millimeters, and she just got the 35, and she's so excited about using it.
Kill it.
Let's see. Oh, Simon has no questions, just love for us. Thank you, Simon. You're so sweet.
Simon.
Kale says, I also want to do photos like old Renaissance painting photos, but I do not know how to animate my portraits. I can't find a tutorial anywhere. Animate them, like I wonder if that's like moving them,
or maybe it's just, maybe there's a language, but maybe it's like an editing thing, like to edit them in that Renaissance painterly style. And there's if you haven't searched for it, like if that question actually does center around editing, there are a ton of really brilliant tutorials on YouTube. If you just search painterly style edits, there's actually a lot of Russian photographers who are brilliant at that. And I, even though I'm half Ukrainian, I won't try and pronounce their names right now because my grandmother will come out of the grave and beat me with the broom because I said things wrong. But I mean, definitely just jump on YouTube and just search painterly portraits and things like that. So much of it too, there's so many elements to doing that type of thing. So, I mean, it's probably too much to even discuss here, but a lot of it is like the set and it's the lighting. I would say one of the biggest things for any painterly style portraits is the light. There's a lot that you could do in post, but if you start with a well-lit image, and as far as that goes, there's plenty of people who touch on, that. Chris Knight comes to mind immediately for really dramatic, Hemi, is amazing. I mean, spectacular. She
Yeah.
literally is a painter in photography.
Oh,
So
she's out of this world.
yeah, she is, and just an incredible human being to boot. Same thing with Chris. So yeah, if you're looking at doing those Renaissance style, painterly style portraits, there are some really brilliant resources out there to take you step by step through it. And then, you know, it's obviously finding the right subject. And if you're compositing, finding the right background. If you're not compositing, getting that in camera. The other elements, costuming is huge. Like, obviously, I love fashion and costumes. I can't even get into that, but just keep searching. It's out there. So I don't want to point you in one direction, but get on the Google machine and the YouTube machine, jump into some of these awesome groups and ask some people, and you'll find what you're looking for.
Absolutely. I think I just want to end on Simon saying, you see this hella cool, unreachable dude who is actually one of the most kind human beings in this world, who doesn't care about competition, but helps you enjoy the journey. And I think, yeah, that was just a comment, not a question.
You know, and I think I really appreciate Simon saying that. Like, I love art, and I love artists. I love the community. And, you know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I really believe that the only thing louder than destruction is creation. And I think as artists, we have the ability to combat so much of the ugliness and the destructive tendencies of the world and individuals and things like that. And it's really an honor to do this. And it's an honor to help other people, you know, find their voice and express themselves. And I think together we lift each other up. I believe in community. And I believe in us supporting each other. And if someone succeeds, we all succeed. So fuck ego. There's enough work for all of us. If you're talking about money, no one's going to say things the way you say them. No one's going to express themselves the way that you do. You have no competition at all. Focus on yourself and on your art. And the world needs artists. The world needs your art. And yeah, you're seen and appreciated and loved. So just keep on your journey and you'll get to where you want to be. I really believe that.
And I think like you saying that is awesome, because I heard you say something similar in Nina Batista's interview with you. And when you said something about most photographers really just appreciate being reached out to and being asked questions. And I just want to touch on that real quick, because I'm right there. I like when photographers reach out to me and say, hey, how did you do this? Or how can I learn from you? I'll be happy to share resources. I don't believe in competition. Yeah. We are better together and we can learn from each other. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to you for
no, thank you.
Actually also doing that exact thing for me. Like, and helping lift me up. It makes me feel so appreciated. And
I do.
I bet there are other photographers out there that you're just as amazing against. So thank you for being a very positive voice in the photography community, because we really need that amongst all the bullshit that photographers sometimes put each other through.
And because I don't respect time limits, there's one more quick thing I want to circle back to, if you're okay with that. And it was earlier, the individual who commented and was saying that, you know, she really wants to get better at her photos, but it's hard. And then we had, you know, some people like Sarah commented back and were supporting her. One of the things that I found personally that has helped me so much is being vulnerable. And, you know, I'm big on books. Like I said, I'm big on reading. I'm big on significant self-help books, you know, not like you know, pin it on a wall and it's going to manifest for you. Not that there's anything wrong with that shit, but I'm into things that are really substantial to me. And like Brene Brown is an amazing author, and she always speaks on vulnerability. And I just want to laud that individual who posted, I want to do this, but it's hard, because that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do, to get into a public forum and go, you know what, this is important to me, but I'm struggling. And it's so important. And I mean, it's for everything. It's for where we're at mentally, where we're at physically, where we're at with your art. So don't be afraid to say you're having a hard time. Don't be afraid to say, I don't understand this. Don't be afraid if you're working with someone to say, slow down. Like, don't be afraid to meet yourself and put yourself out there. And that's an act of courage, and it's an act of bravery to be vulnerable. So be open to what you don't know, and express that and share that, and allow the world and individuals who care. And there's a lot of individuals who care to help fill those gaps and to lift you up and to propel you forward. So you know, be vulnerable and be receptive to vulnerability. When you see that, if you know the answer to the question, if you can help someone, get off your ass and fucking help them. Like if you have, if you're in a place to do it, obviously, you know, we're all, it's not saying, oh, you need to put everything aside, but like, you know, if you're in a good place, you know, if you're in a good place, fucking take 5 minutes and help somebody. Like the world needs more of that shit. Like all of us need to get out of our own heads more. All of us need to get out of our own worlds and be less egoic and just stop with that self-centered shit for everything, everyone. Like focus on yourself first. That's not self-centered. Self-care is not self-centered.
No.
But once you're done with the self-care, pay that shit forward.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's incredibly important to have that vulnerability and dare put yourself out there and taking the risk, opening yourself up to someone saying that you want in your life or that you want to be inspired by or whatnot, and just be honest about that, saying, hey, I love your work, I want to learn from you. That's vulnerability too. Yeah. And that's what's going to help you move forward. If you just sit in your own little bubble and you're so afraid and you're so scared of getting out there and you're not able to express yourself and express that anxiety and that fear, then you will have a really tough time moving forward and finding the inspiration and learning and getting into the environment and just really developing yourself, your photography style, but also as a human.
I like that. Yeah. And
work that in there.
And to bring everything fully around, same thing. I think that it's really about yourself. Like style is something that emerges organically. Absolutely. I don't think it's a process that can be forced. So focus on your art, focus on inspiration, focus on, what drives you and impels you, explore, fail, falter, fuck up, falter, rinse and repeat. And you keep doing that consistently, step by step, and you'll get to where you want to be, and your voice and your style will emerge. Don't try and be anyone but you, because everyone else is already taken. So fuck that, be you.
Exactly. And celebrate your victories.
Yes.
When you do succeed, when there's something that you love, don't like fuck everyone else. When there's something that you love and you created something that you feel completely energized by, celebrate that shit.
And when that happens, print it. Print the shit that you love. This isn't like, I'm not saying do in-person sales and print for money, but for yourself. Print your work for you. And please go ahead.
The first time I printed my work and saw it on print, it was like unreal. It's just such a tangible way of seeing your art, and suddenly you're not just a social media photographer.
And I'm gonna step out of frame for 1 second. This will be the last thing that I do, but I'm shooting from my camera. It's gonna be kind of a weird frame, but I have all of this on my wall, which is gonna be blurry because of the way it's focusing right now.
Super blurry.
It's fine. But anyway, there's all this here, and it doesn't matter because you don't need to see it. But the point is, this is all old work for me.
Okay, go up a little bit. Oh, that's beautiful. The woman with the necklace?
Yes. That was one of the first editorials I shot with a really big team that I was proud of. But point being is that I'll come back into the frame here. My whole space, my whole creative space is filled with prints. And it's not filled with the work that I produced recently. It's filled with the work that's important to me because it represented jumps. Like I have a portrait of Felix Coons, and I shot it when I went to one of his workshops. And I asked him, I'm like, can I photograph you? Aaron J. Young, I love you. We were there together. We both photographed Felix. We all went out, had a drink. It was a beautiful moment for me. But I surround myself with these things. And it's not necessarily what I would consider my best work, but it's what's most important to me. Right. And when I get stuck and when I'm down on myself, I look over at these and they're literally like friends boosting me up. It's like having someone whisper in my ear, you got this, you can do it, keep going. So yeah, keep those tangible manifestations of your journey around you. And when you're faltering, they will be a source of inspiration and strength. I really believe that.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. And I could talk with you about these things for hours on end. And one day when we're in the same part of the world,
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It has to happen. We need to sit down and have a drink and talk art and philosophy and life. Because
I love that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to end this. Hopefully I will be creating more interviews with amazing people like yourself. So please, people, subscribe to my channel, like this video.
Definitely subscribe. And if you haven't, I'm going to interrupt her right now. If you haven't checked out the other content on this channel, do it, because she totally goes into her process and editing and lighting and talks about creativity and development. And it's really beautiful, authentic content. So check that out, you know, especially if you are looking for that and consume it and revel in it, because that's just being given away and it's super fucking amazing. And drop her lovely notes and appreciate the people who are giving. And yeah, subscribe, hit the subscribe button. I'm shameless. I become shameless. I'm getting old. I don't have time to be fucking humble anymore. Fuck that. I'm shameless.
Oh, I hope I'll be there in a few years too. But yeah, and go on Jonny's Instagram. I'm going to link it in the description below. I'm going to link the social links. So go follow his work, because your work is amazing.
And reach out. The last thing I know we keep saying the last thing and then it keeps going on, but the last thing I'll say is, like, if you do have any questions that we didn't cover here, stuff that comes to mind, reach out to me on social, Facebook, Instagram, send me an email via my website. I always love to talk art. You know, I always love to do that type of stuff. Those conversations are great for me. And there's something that I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, whether I'm talking to myself in my head or to someone else, I'm always going to be talking art and philosophy and life. So let's just keep it going, keep the momentum going.
And I'm right there with you. It's the same thing for me. And frankly, when people reach out and then we just seem less crazy for not talking to ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I can't guarantee that I'm not a little crazy, but we don't. Yeah.
I mean, artists are always crazy.
You have to be, don't you?
You have to be a little bit fucking nuts. I just had that conversation with someone. I'm like, you're never like, you never meet an artist and you're like, oh, your work's amazing. And they're like, well, I've never had a hard day in my life and everything has been perfect. And I'm so well adjusted and I never struggle. But I just felt the need to create this beautiful, evocative painting because I was like, it was either that or yoga and a macchiato. And it's just, it doesn't happen like that. It's compulsion. Like, I think we as artists, I think a lot of artists, we feel compelled to create, you know, we come to it and it's, you know, it's literally like, shit, if I don't fucking get this onto paper, if I don't create this photograph, if I don't paint this picture, like, I'm going to fucking go insane or I'm going to jump off a bridge or whatever it might be. Like, it's a driving force. It's part of who we are as human beings.
People ask me all the time why I do photography, and my answer is always to breathe. It's a way of breathing. I love that. It's photography is a creative outlet for me, to kind of relieve the pressure that's inside of my mind, inside of my body, and it helps me breathe. Yeah. Okay.
Breath is to be alive. I think it's the same way for me. Like, art is life, and photography for me is life, and it's given me purpose and meaning and place, and it keeps me going when I feel like nothing else does. And I'm once again, I feel beholden to it in that way. So once again, thank you so much for inviting me on. I feel honored to have had this conversation. I feel honored to be the first person. We had that technical glitch, but we worked through it. And
it worked.
You know, outside of anything else, even if anyone else didn't derive any value from this, it meant a lot to me and I took a lot away from it. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure.
Okay. I think we reached the end point. Fade out. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.